Hello and welcome to the Matt Chambers Show, connecting people, places, and ideas. I'm your host, Matt Chambers. This is the podcast about living, traveling, and doing business internationally. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories and actionable insights to help you create a life beyond borders. Tune in and turn your dreams into reality. So tell me a little about your background. I mean, you came from the UK. How'd you come from the UK to Brazil, and
Y-
what you doing now?
Yeah, good question. So I came from the UK actually on a church mission trip would have been my first contact with Brazil. This is in 2003 at the tender age of 20.
Wow.
Um, So went to Sao Paulo for a couple of weeks and really fell in love with Brazil. Met my now wife back then as
Hmm.
well. So visited Brazil a total of three times before moving here for the first time. Moved to Brazil for the first time in 2005. Stayed for a time in the northeast. First of all in João Pessoa, and
Yeah.
then Recife. Got married during that time as well, and was really involved in mission work, teaching English, that kind of thing. Went back to the UK, did a theology degree, became an ordained minister in the Anglican Church in the UK. But we always had the intention of coming back. So after eight and a half years in the UK in 2015, we moved to Florianopolis. So the first time I came to Florianopolis would have been in 2006, whilst living in the Northeast, and it just felt like
Hmm.
a real contrast. I mean, Brazil is such a huge country, and there are many Brazils in Brazil,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
it definitely has more of a kind of European vibe uh,
Mhm.
down south, and I think in some ways it just felt more like home. It was easier to adapt. I stood out less as well because in Recife I was a head taller than everybody else and very pale, so everyone knows you're a gringo. And
Mhm.
I guess you always will be a gringo in that kind of context. And then coming to the south, everything just kind of felt one. It was a lot safer because Recife was very tense, whereas
Mm.
Florianopolis was just very, and other places in Santa Catarina were just very relaxed. Just felt very safe. Um, very good infrastructure as well. So I really liked being down here and really wanted, in the future to come back. So when we did move back eventually we decided to come to Florianopolis, and I actually came and started a church here. So I was a missionary supported by a organization in the UK, or lots of churches kind of supported us through an organization in the UK. So I set up a church from scratch. I pastored that essentially for nearly 7 years. Uh, a few change in sort of personal circumstances. Uh, Marriage kind of broke down at the time, and but now we've reconciled. But I stepped back from church ministry, and I guess during that time was just kind of exploring what next. And a couple of people suggested looking into real estate, being a realtor down here and things, and so yeah, through the invite of the father of one of my son's school friends, started working for a real estate agency, and then I guess really started seeing the potential to help international buyers acquire property down here. One of the things about Brazil is English proficiency isn't great, and uh, perhaps to find those professionals who can really help um, internationals, not just with language barriers, but actually with the process of bringing money into Brazil, documents, and even immigration issues as well. There's not always too much expertise in that area as well. So was able to really sort of carve out a niche for myself in Florianopolis and some of the other cities along the coast here.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Latin America as a whole, and I know in my Brazil experience, it's the same in this regard, is everyone says they're an expert. I think I said that earlier. Everyone says they're an
Yeah,
expert, and it takes most people 5 years to figure out who the real expert is and who's trying to
yeah,
scam them and just take their money. And so when you find someone you trust, you're better off in Latin America sticking with that person. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it strikes me that sometimes there's a bit of a culture of people, if they're unable to do something or don't know, they don't let on. They'll tell you, "Oh, I can do that for you," or they know how to do something. And I don't know whether that's just a cultural thing or a kind of fear of losing potential clients or business as well. But obviously, that can backfire if you don't follow through on what you say you can do and offer.
man, I think it backfires worse though on the client than it does on the person who's
Yeah,
saying that they know what they're
yeah.
doing, right? Because
Particularly,
there's
I
no
guess, yeah.
repercussions.
No, no. I guess particularly kind of as real estate, a lot of people, let's say, make their money once the first payment comes in and commission is gone, the agent is received. Then worst case scenario, sometimes they can disappear and the client could be left with a problem to resolve, like, how do I get the deed in my name? What documents do I need? What about immigration implications now? So yeah, unfortunately, it is a profession that can lend itself to professionals who are just looking at the short term gain they can get from a transaction without following through on the subsequent steps that need to be taken.
And property rights are an issue in Brazil too, right? I mean, you really have to do your due diligence on
Yeah,
on that.
you yeah, you do. I mean, if we were to take something like Florianopolis for instance, 60% of houses or homes, I should say, whether they're apartments or houses, do not have the deed, what we call the escritura pública
Sixty
here.
percent.
60%, yeah.
Wow.
So
So how do you figure that out?
how do you, well, normally you'll know from the transaction. So that, even on a domestic Brazilian site, one of the things that's normally advertised and should be advertised is, and you'll see it this way. They'll tell you if the apartment cannot be financed by a bank. So that reading in between the lines, that means it does not have a deed. It's what we call a buy and sell contract here in Brazil. So that's the main way. Because obviously on purchasing as well, you want to see the deed, you want to see what they call the matricula here. You want to see that. If it doesn't have a deed, you'll need to see the buy and sell contract that the current owner has, and also the history, tracing it right back. This kind of succession of who's brought it, or even going back to the land as well. Who originally took possession of that land and sold it to who. And I guess it gets messy really when it is a property without the deed. That's where it can get messy, and it can be people with different claims, or even in some cases, someone fraudulently trying to sell a
Something
property
that's
that's
not
not
theirs.
theirs. Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, there can be issues when it has the deed as well. Does the person have outstanding debt? Have they gone for a divorce? Do other people have a claim to the property? In some cases, some transactions are more straightforward. Maybe if you're buying straight from a developer, they've normally got all their ducks in a row, and it's more straightforward. But I think you have to take everything by a case by case basis. I think there are some, let's say, gringos, internationals who would see a property without the deed and would just think, forget about it, not interested. But then there are others who want to explore a good deal as well, and would encourage them to do the due diligence and things. And you can work with a lawyer or hopefully a good real estate agency as well, would have helped qualified that property and things. So it's some
So
transactions are more straight. Go on.
does it happen? And I mean, I assume the answer is yes, but I guess how often does it happen that someone goes through a legitimate real estate agency to purchase a property and then finds out later that it was an illegal transaction in some way, or maybe that owner didn't actually own the property? Or do
Yeah,
most
that's a good.
legit real estate agencies do their due diligence? Probably not.
They would maybe not always as in detail. It could be that when it comes to selling, then they'll draw down. But they themselves could capture a property at kind of face value. Someone presents themselves. But I normally think that kind of fraud happens when it's done outside of legit agencies as well. Someone is independent, or they kind of set them that they're not actually a proper. They're not a licensed real estate agent as well. I think I was talking to someone about this the other day. I think the worst case of fraud I've seen in my 9.5 years living here in Florianopolis is probably going back now about 7 years ago, where there was a developer who, there must have been a new outfit, started building two projects simultaneously in the neighborhood. It was without a deed, buy and sell contract, and they sold the same unit to multiple people at the same
Oh
time.
my
So
God.
multiple people thought they or had a contract and believed that that was their unit. And then when the developers received enough money, they, or whatever amount they were satisfied with, they disappeared. And then the kind of I mean, the funny thing is that they started erecting the structures anyway. They, so I guess it gave potential buyers a lot of confidence. That they're a legit outfit and whatnot. And then they disappeared. And then the realization that not only had the work been abandoned, but the same units had been sold to multiple
To
different
multiple
people,
people.
unfortunately. And
Oh,
unfortunately, I knew two people at the time two families, in fact, who brought an apartment there. And maybe not a large amount in terms of dollars, but actually for those people here, locals, life savings going into something like that. So that's really painful to see something like that. Now, it wasn't, like I say, you can. I mean, I always encourage people as well, particularly when buying off plan, to get a deeded property, to go with a developer that's got a good history and things like that. But at the same time, that developer would have listed his units with several different real estate agencies, so they weren't really talking to each other, and would have sold, unwittingly. Those real estate agencies would have, or individual agents as well who work autonomously, would have unwittingly sold units to people, not realizing that they were selling that unit for the second or third time. So, yeah, so sometimes horror stories can happen.
so obviously you're better off looking for a place that has a deed if you're trying to be super
Yes,
safe. And then if you're going to invest with a developer, it needs to be a reputable developer that's been around for a while.
absolutely. Yeah,
I've had a lot of people tell me what your thoughts are on this, but I've in my Brazil experience, I've had a lot of people tell me that you're better off in Brazil investing in developers instead of just buying an independent property. Or is that not accurate? Like you're better off buying from a like a pre-construction.
in terms of making money, that's where most money is made in Brazil. You buy off plan, so it's already the square meter, if you like. We'll do meters, we'll do metric here. The square meter is cheaper than it would be if it was ready, and also Brazil is gives, and particularly the market here in the south, gives very good appreciation. So you're buying a property that would be cheaper than it's ready, and also the property market is always going up at a certain rate here as well. So a lot of investors here like to utilize a strategy of flipping. They'll buy off plan, they'll surf that appreciation, then they'll sell it. And in some cases, depending on how well structured the developer is, or financing options that are ready, the actual initial investor doesn't fork out the whole amount. So they may put down a 10-15% deposit, and maybe by the time, if it's a smaller build and they can get bank finance at the end, perhaps during the life of the build, they'll pay 30% of the property for the price they agreed on at the start. The property has appreciated, and then as it's ready, they flip it. They sell it, for a much higher price, and they've only paid 30% off the
So they're
actual
selling
value.
it
Yeah,
before they never move in it.
yeah, and that's possible. You can sell stuff on in the plant as well. Particularly if it's if it's a large building as well, like in Balneário Camboriú, there
Mhm.
are lots of skyscrapers, tallest buildings in Brazil. So I work in house as well with the largest developer. So projects that maybe take 5 years, 6 years to complete, but they'll have a payment plan where the customer can pay over 8 years in 100 monthly installments, and sometimes over 10 years in 120 monthly installments. And during the life of that build, maybe most of the units will be sold off. Reputable investor, seen as a good investment opportunity. So then you have, a few years into that project, if you've had, you got in early, maybe 2 years out from completion, your property has gone up in value. It's a desirable place, so there's customers for it who would even buy it off you, um, not being ready yet as well. So a
So
lot of
what
people
kind
would,
of if you're jumping into those, and I'm sure every situation is
yeah.
different, but if you're jumping into those pre-constructions, on average, are you buying that at 20% less than?
Yeah, you are, and the market's always going up as well. So it's not uncommon to get 20 or even 25% appreciation a year. There's often an element as well with the developer. Um, as soon as if they have units available for sale, as soon as they're ready and delivered, there's a 20% jump up in the price as well at
Wow,
that
so you've
point.
made if you buy a pre-construction that's 2 to 3 years, say let's say three
Yeah,
years from being completed, you could have you could have gained 20% per year before you even get
yeah,
the keys to the place, and then the minute you get the keys, it's another 20%.
yeah.
So you could have made the majority of your money back by the time you
Yeah,
had the keys to
so
that place.
it's not uncommon that some people do 100% during the life of
Wow.
the property. So it's a very popular way. In some cases, people buy to rent after as well. Just to have Brazilians very much like
Airbnb
to
or
invest.
long-term
Yeah,
rent.
exactly. Brazilians very much like to not leave money in the bank, but to put it in an asset and then have that working for them. But a lot of Brazilians see it as the kind of investing sweet spot is buying off plan, surfing that appreciation, making a good profit on the resale as well. So
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed in Brazil that I was super attracted to was the fact that if you buy a place in Cancun, you buy a place in all the tourist areas. Let's go to Colombia for an example.
mhm,
If you buy in Colombia, you're basically banking on the tourist market for your renters and for the people that
mhm,
are going to buy your place after, right? Because Americans come down, or Brits come down, they buy a place in a really nice building or a really nice house that a lot of locals can't afford.
yeah,
And some locals can, right? There's plenty of people with money, but it's just a smaller percentage of locals that have the money to spend that much on a place. So if you decide to resell, or even when you're renting, you're banking on the tourism market. If the
yeah,
tourism market dries up there, you're screwed. I mean, you're going to have all this inventory of foreigners owning expensive properties, and then no one's going to be there to buy it or rent it, right? If it completely dries up. Whereas in Brazil, the tourism, as amazing as Brazil is, the tourism sucks. Not many people go to Brazil. I mean, comparatively speaking, right? Because it's kind of far. They don't really do a very good job marketing their tourism for whatever reason. Um, but the beauty about Brazil is Brazilians have money and Brazilians move around and Brazilians travel. So you have the local market and the tourism becomes kind of an extra thing, right?
yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, if you take the coast here in Santa Catarina, I totally hear what you're saying. I think for so much of Brazil, that's so true. There's just a good internal market. Houses being up at all levels. It,
Mhm.
it kind of seems sometimes the two markets, even when there's a downturn in the market, the two markets that do really well in Brazil are the kind of social housing levels. Like there's a program by the government called Minha Casa Minha Vida, my house, my life, which just because of the price and stuff and volume, they just sell really well. and the luxury market does really well in
Yep.
Brazil as well, because there is a lot of money, and that's driven internally by Brazilians. I mean, it even surprises
Absolutely.
me working with the largest luxury developer in the south of Brazil, bigger of the world's tallest residential building. I'm the only person on the commercial team who speaks English. Um,
Wow.
and by default as well, I do a lot of work for their marketing team doing all their translation, just because there's no real experience of working with internationals. It's
Mhm.
their core business is with national investors. So there is a lot of demand, but I'd say about Santa Catarina and the coast here as well, we have a very as well as all that you said about terms of very good, lots of people within Brazil who want to relocate here, build up their own property portfolio and things. Um, there is, and also high demand for rent as well. We also have a very intense tourist season going from December, um, February into March. It goes strong till that, and we get a lot of tourists actually from Argentina, principally,
Chile.
Paraguay, Chile, as well. And now starting to see more European and North Americans. I've definitely seen more, kind of European and North American visitors coming
Mhm.
as well. So it's like what you get here as well as an investor, you get that extra bonus of actually a very intense tourist season. So just to give you an idea, last year Florianopolis was the number one sought after destination on Airbnb in Brazil, and number seven globally in the world. And I still think it's a place that does not have the global recognition that it deserves. I think there's still a
Mhm.
lot of misconceptions about Brazil, and most people I think Brazil is Rio, Sao Paulo, and there's a huge rainforest. But actually, Brazil, as you
Rio.
said earlier, it's a very developed country, very modern, and particularly in the south in many ways. So actually, another for housing investors here, you can do very, very well, not only from kind of monthly rent, that kind of thing, but from this high tourist season where there's a lot of demand, and those daily prices, they go up a lot during that time, so you can make some good money. It's not uncommon for locals here to, during the height of the tourist season, to take to go on a vacation somewhere or stay with a relative so that they can rent out their apartment that's in a beach neighborhood and make some good income
Yeah.
during that
Yeah.
time.
And Santa Catarina, for anyone that doesn't have experience with Brazil, has the reputation of being one of the safest, if not the safest, big city in
Absolutely.
Brazil. Well, especially, the whole entire state is super safe because it's very, very
Yeah,
German influenced,
exactly.
and it has a lot of money there. And, I mean, I know in Rio, you can't take your phone out of your pocket in Rio. Like if you have your
No.
phone, actually, you shouldn't even have your phone in your pocket because they're sitting there looking at your pockets to see if there's a phone in there, because you can see it through your pocket most of the time, right? So I keep mine in my waistband, and I only go out with cash that I need for the day, maybe major credit card in Rio. So that's Rio, and if you know how to navigate that, if you've traveled Latin America for a long time and you know what the crimes are, you can avoid a lot of those. But most people don't want to live like that forever, right? You'd
No.
rather live in
No.
a place like Santa Catarina where you can walk down the street
Yeah.
with your iPhone in your hand. Everyone else has an iPhone too. They don't care about yours that much. Um, and yeah, I mean, I definitely think that Floripa is a place that Americans love and would more of them would love if they visited there. And to your point about tourism, there's probably not all that much American tourism. I think you said it. It's mostly Argentinians, Brazilians,
Yeah.
Chileans, Paraguayans, all the wealthier South Americans that come there during that time. So you don't have to depend just on the American tourism market, because all the other countries down there also want to go to Brazil. It's like they're
Yeah.
kind of high end getaway, right? I mean, for
Absolutely.
Paraguayans and maybe Argentinians,
Yeah.
going to Santa Catarina is like somebody going to Miami, sort of, right? Do you need reliable shipping across Latin America and the Caribbean? CaribbeanShipper.com specializes in delivering from the U.S. straight to your door in Colombia, Panama, and Argentina. And yes, they also serve the Caribbean, from Turks and Caicos all the way down to Trinidad. Right now, they're rapidly expanding in Medellin, Colombia, and quickly growing their presence in Panama and Argentina. With door-to-door tracking, insured shipments, and seamless customs handling, they've got your shipping needs covered. So whether you're a digital nomad, a retiree, or a business scaling internationally, Caribbean Shipper is your trusted partner. From consolidating online orders to shipping full container loads, they ensure your packages arrive safely. So register today at CaribbeanShipper.com/register and let them take care of your shipping needs throughout Latin America and the Caribbean.
Yeah, and in the kind of south of Brazil, this is where the nicest beaches are. So to have beaches of this standard anywhere else, you need to go. I think it's only really at the tip, the top end of Sao Paulo state into Rio state that you start to really see, great beaches. So yeah, it's a very desirable place. And interestingly enough, I was speaking to an Argentinian friend earlier on today who work with a lot of tourists who come here as well. Despite Brazil, not being the cheapest country in South America and Argentina having all the issues it had, a week in Santa Catarina or Brazil in general, because some will go as far as Rio, is actually weaker than places like Bariloche and other places in Argentina. So they're expecting a huge influx of Argentinians this year. We always see a lot here, but there are definitely years where it really peaks. And I think now, post-pandemic, country has stabilized somewhat. There's a huge expectancy that the Argentinians will come here en masse and invade our coastline.
I'm interested in the capital gains taxes and the taxes that you pay on rental income, right, in Brazil. I know that if you don't have the correct structure, the taxes can be fairly high on cap gains and also on your monthly income. But there's also a way to put those properties under a holding and bring that down from like 27% to like 7%, right? It's a little less than 7%. I think it's like 6.88%.
Yeah, you can get it for around, the tax system for a company under what they call Simples Nacional, like simplified national tax, is as low as 6%. As well. So if you have a property portfolio, it's definitely worth setting up some kind of holding and administering your properties through that as well. If not, as the max you can be charged as an individual, once you go over, I think it's around 4,000 something a month on the property. Once you get over that for your rent income, then you're hitting around 27% tax on that. That can be offset with any costs you have, maintenance on the property, investment, and anything else. There's always ways.
So you do get some write-offs. If you've spent money on the business, you get some write-offs.
Yeah.
But not quite to the extent that you would get in an American tax system or British tax system, right?
Probably not. You'd have to be very creative to justify those write-offs. So yeah, definitely, if you're thinking about building a portfolio, and you're not relying initially on a property for immigration purposes, which we can come on to, set up a holding.
Yeah, so basically, just to make numbers easy for people, I know you're not going to get $100,000 place in Santa Catarina, but to make the numbers easy, well, you can probably get a nice place there for 250 grand, right? Starting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you can get stuff here. Are we talking USD now, or
yeah, just USD to make it easy for people. Yeah.
Yeah, here in Ingles, I live in Ingleses on the north of the island. Actually, you can get some really nice properties for around R1 million. So what's that?
So it's about 200 grand.
Rate. Actually, less at the moment because of the exchange rate.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's less than 100. It's a very good time. You can see the salesperson in me now. It's a very good time to get in. But saying that, it really is, because typically the dollar sits at R5 per dollar, but now
it's 5.8 right now.
6. Yeah, exactly. So your dollar or your sterling, your euros go very fast. So, and depending on where you obviously Florianopolis is that bit more expensive than other places in Brazil because of the demand. It drives up the
Right.
prices.
But
However,
it's worth it.
absolutely, yeah, for so many reasons. It's a place that there's demand. Land is scarce. It's an island, so prices will go up. They will continue to go up, and also there's a lot of demand, both in terms of for resales or rental property, whether that's a kind of annual rent or Airbnb. It's a good place to invest. So
Well, I
even if
think
you
the
have
safety for Americans, right? I mean, somewhere like
exactly,
going back to the safety thing, Americans would be willing to pay, and I think Brits too, quite a bit more just to know that they can walk down the street with their cell phone in their hand with no problem. And
yeah,
secondly, know that when they arrive, they're going to be hanging out with some really high level Brazilians as well, right? So it'd be great for business contacts. I mean, the people that I've met from Santa Catarina, man, they're some of the smartest people I've ever met. Sao Paulo as well. Those people they're just business people by nature, and
absolutely, yeah. You see that Sao Paulo is business. That's really where stuff happens. And
absolutely.
if you want to make a lot of money, you kind of get that impression about it. But yeah,
So
here in
if your
Santa.
if your property's in a holding, right? Let's compare these two. So if I'm
Mhm.
buying, let's say $100,000 place, just so, because that makes numbers easy, and
Yeah,
taxes, if I'm buying it in my personal name, are 27%, let's say, and I have no write offs, I'm obviously paying $27,000 to the government in
yeah,
capital gains taxes if I sell that house, and then I'm also going to pay if I'm making $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month off the property. I'm going to be paying that same 27% income tax, right?
yeah,
Per year
exactly.
or per month. But if that's in a holding, I'm paying $6,000 roughly between six and seven
Yeah,
thousand dollars in cap gains and six and $7,000 in tax off my income. But in both cases, do I have those same write offs? So if I'm in a holding, do I also have those same business
yeah,
expenses that I can write down?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
So
Okay. And then as far as property laws and property rights, I mean, I think the fear with a lot of foreign investors, especially in Latin America, is how do we guarantee that nobody's going to come in and take my property away, right? I mean, I don't see that happening in Brazil that much, where
yeah,
the government's coming in and taking your property. I mean, that's a fear everyone has, but I never
sure.
heard of that.
No, and Brazilians wouldn't stand for that as well. Brazil it is a democracy. Um, even despite having a government that is more left leaning, I think there would be real outrage if people tried to if government ever tried to seize um, people's property. Um, and just thinking about the current government as well, I know in one sense that affected confidence of buyers, being a more
Mm-hmm.
left socialist leaning government and international and both international buyers as well. But I think there has been that realization that despite the current government being in power, the sky hasn't caved in, and they
Mm-hmm.
haven't tried to encroach on people's property as well. Things could be better. They always could be, but I, I always think Brazil is one of those countries that's too big to fail in a sense, and to kind of go the way of Venezuela or something like that. So
Yeah, I don't see it either.
no,
Brazilians, I've traveled all of Latin America, and I tell people all the time, I'm really pissed that, in a way, I'm pissed that Brazil was the last Latin American country that I visited. I mean, there's plenty more Latin American countries that I haven't been to, but I've been to all the main ones for sure, and
hmm
most places in between. Um, but Brazil is incredible. It's a place that you can have a really good life. That you can still get that Latin American chilled out, relaxed, great fun life, but at the
yeah,
same time do a lot of business if you want to do a lot of business. Whereas in a lot of other Latin
absolutely,
American countries, you get the relaxed, really chill life, but it's real damn hard to do business in like a place like
yeah,
Colombia.
yeah,
Because there's just no money to be had. I mean, in terms of taxes and that kind of thing. Colombia makes things very easy to do business, but at the
Hmm.
same time, there's no money to go around, so you can't make any money. And Brazil's the opposite of that. You land in Brazil, especially Sao Paulo and Rio, people are driving cars and nice cars, and
Yeah,
you see much less motos. And I know that Brazil is has its issues too, and there's a lot of homeless people in areas like Rio
yeah,
and Sao Paulo. But for the most part, if a foreigner wants to go down there and live a really good life and make money, he can do that.
yeah.
And
Absolutely, absolutely. And it may be that in other areas of Brazil, people have different experiences, but you know, uh, very much south of Brazil, Sao Paulo downwards, it is a good environment for business, and corruption is probably a lot better than people think. In comparison to other, obviously it exists in places, and of course you have people who would also try and take advantage, but it's not as bad as some foreigners fear at times. I don't know whether that's based on experiences of other places in Latin America or the world, but I don't see that same mentality in this part of the Brazil, to certainly not in this part of Brazil, to want to exploit the gringos. I'm sure there are individual stories and things like that, but on the whole, I do think it's a good environment to do business. And I also believe there are lots of opportunities in Brazil. Being an emerging country, it's very developed, but it's still developing. So I do think
mhm.
there's some very good business opportunities, and certainly have international friends who have tried different things here, and things, and have found Brazil a good country to do business and make money. Is it the lowest places for tax in the world? No, uh, but at the same time, it's a great place to live. Climate's
Yeah.
great,
Mhm.
people are great, and there's a lot going for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love that place, and I think that Brazil. No, no, I don't think I know. Brazil is now my Latin American destination, and it's not that I won't continue traveling to other places, but for living, I don't think that you'll see me really living long term anywhere other than Brazil and Latin America. I'll go back and forth between Miami and Brazil, and I think that I think I'll be happy with that maybe for the rest of my life. Frankly, Brazil
No,
offers
it's
everything I
yeah.
need.
Absolutely. I think Brazil is one of those places where people really do fall in love with it for a number of reasons. I think partly it is the people, they're so receptive. Climate's great, food's great, cost of life in the grand scheme of things is actually a lot, isn't that bad, particularly when compared to North America, Europe, the
Right.
UK. And I would echo, as much as I like going back to the UK, I couldn't imagine myself living back there, and I couldn't really imagine myself wanting to live anywhere else apart from this area in Brazil. Which I love
Mhm.
Brazil as a country as well. I love traveling around, but certainly for me, that just feel so at home here in the state I'm in, and seeing increasingly people come here for a time, spend some time here. They seriously think about making this, even if they have quite a nomadic lifestyle, or at least setting up a home base here as well.
Yeah, another thing that I wanted to point out that was really surprising to me in Brazil was, if you go to a place like Mexico, everyone knows that if you go down there and you set up a retail shop in Mexico, right, and you're doing really well and you're kicking ass, somebody's going to arrive at your door and either ask you for money for that, or you might end up dead, depending on what part
Yeah,
of Mexico that you're in, right? Um, and the same in Colombia. In Colombia, you're for the most part, they're not going to come and kill you. I don't really see that happening, but they're going to come and ask you for taxes, right? They're going to say, "Hey, man, you've been doing really good business here. We need some money to protect you," that kind of thing. And because of that, a lot of people just don't really want to do business in those places. And
no,
look, I love both those places. I love Mexico. I love Colombia for a lot of reasons. But it was so relaxing to me to hear that you can put in basically any business you want in Brazil and no one cares. Like if you come down
yeah,
there, you put in a business and you win, no one
yeah,
you just win. No one's going to show up at your door and put a gun to your head, right?
no, exactly. It's a free
So
market, so you can
yeah,
come and set up, and yeah,
yeah. It's the only thing is for U.S. people, it's a little far away from home, which is maybe maybe the reason that people don't go there as much. I don't know, because it is an 8.5 hour flight out of Florida, but it's an 8.5 hour flight that every time I've flown, it's been worth it for me.
Yeah, no,
So,
absolutely, absolutely. I'd agree. Sometimes maybe cite that as a reason why south of Brazil isn't as well known or as well visited as it should be, really. But it's certainly worth the journey down here, and I think um, really supersedes people's expectations of
hmm,
Brazil in many ways.
no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So one question I had was mortgages. Is that a no for an American, or are there ways around?
Okay. Um, to get a bank mortgage, you would basically need to have your Brazilian documents. So you would need to have some kind of residency status. And also, as well, you'd need to work with a mortgage broker who's able to recognize your foreign income. So that's not impossible. And I know internationals that with a foreign income, but also having their Brazilian documents, they've been able to secure a mortgage. So it's not going to be an overnight thing, and it's not a solution if you're looking to purchase a property new in Brazil, or if you're external to Brazil. Another advantage of off plan, or even buying direct from a developer, is you can finance directly with them.
Oh,
Obviously, you're not going to have the same length of term as with a mortgage, 20, 25 years, 30 years. But there are some developers that could extend to, in my experience, 10 years of
and so
finance.
when
And
you finance through those guys, how does that? What documents do they require? Do they just require basically the down payment, and then they kind of say, "Hey, if you don't pay in a certain amount of time, we take it back"? Or
yeah, so in some cases, in some cases, the developer would deem, well, the risk isn't great. It's off plan, so I've got a deposit. And I've got monthly payments coming in, and if they fall behind for a time, however many months in arrears, they could come to a solution where they'll even buy it back from you. Obviously, there's a fine, so you lose a certain percentage of what you've paid, or they may even help you to resell that, and take a certain amount out. So I think for most developers, they operate on that premise. The risk isn't great for them whilst it's off plan. Um,
wow.
yeah, some other developers can be more difficult. They would like to see some kind of proof of your financial capacity. So maybe as an American, they would like to, see your social security number, and see what they can find out in terms of assets you have in your name. What's interesting for bringing money in through the proper channels as well in Brazil, bringing that in through central banks as well. Those agencies will want to know where the money is coming from, and part of that is assessing your capacity. Show me your tax returns. Show me that you can justify this money. Perhaps that in many cases can reassure the developers as well of the person's financial capacity to be able to purchase a property. So it's definitely easier to secure finance directly with a developer than it is with a bank having no Brazilian residency status, no financial history in Brazil.
And you and your organization helps mediate those transactions, right? So would you
Absolutely.
guys, if I said, "Hey, I want to buy a place in Santa Catarina and on a pre-construction," you guys probably already have some developers in mind that you trust, right? Or
Absolutely.
and you do all
Yeah,
that upfront research so that the buyer doesn't have to.
exactly. And even from ourselves, from a selfish point of view, we don't want a headache in the future. So making sure that people, because it's a huge responsibility as well. People pouring money into property, even though prices are very competitive compared to Europe, the United States. Actually, it's still a lot of money, that's coming in. So yeah, we only work with developers who we're confident that they'll deliver and deliver on time as well, because I know that can generate a lot of stress and things like that. And we help people step by step, help them, because what's compulsory for buying, you need to get your Brazilian tax ID number. Sometimes you can reserve a property, put a down payment on the property before you have that, but we can help you get your Brazilian tax ID number, known as a CPF. And get the banking structures set up as well. So, even I kind of think a lot of my time goes beyond that of a normal real estate agent, often helping
Mhm.
actually clients understand a bit of the banking system and help them find good solutions to transfer those monies into Brazil. We work with some trusted partners as well. We can set up for people non-residence account. So even though you're not a resident in Brazil and can't get an account with a commercial bank, we can get you a non-residence account with currency transfer, a bank that's specialized in currency transfers, and get your money brought in through the proper channels as well. That means the money will come in through central bank. You'll pay a tax that's compulsory, known as IOF, which is something like 0.38% as a percentage of that. But also for immigration status as well, you need to show that the money has come in through the proper channels if you want to go down the golden visa route that Brazil offers for property purchase.
That's what, about a million reais in investment right now for.
Exactly. Yeah, in the
So if you
south of
invest,
Brazil,
just for people that don't know anything, in southern Brazil, it's a million reais, which is about 180, 190 grand right now, something like that. So if you invest that, then you get, I believe it's a 5-year visa.
you get a 4-year investor's visa. So you'll need to apply, but as soon as you get the deed for the property, you can apply for it. So you get a 4 years investor's visa, which to maintain that residency, you need to spend, in a 2-year period, you need to spend 14 days in Brazil.
You need to spend
Hold
what?
on, 14 days in Brazil, 2 weeks. Every 2 years, spend at least 14 days in Brazil. Um,
Awesome. I mean, so you
or a
buy a
week a year.
place, invest in a place. It's 180 grand, and you get your migration visa and you or your residency visa, and you just have to be there 14 days out of 2 years. That's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So after 4 years, you will then need to upgrade your visa or to change your visa. So you'll be on an investment visa, and then you can apply for a permanent visa. And it's the same thing to maintain the residency. But after an additional 4 years, so 8 years total, you can also, if you want to, apply for citizenship as well to get a Brazilian passport.
Wow, that's
So,
incredible. Cool, cool.
yeah.
And you guys help with this whole entire
Yeah,
transaction once
exactly.
it's done.
So we structure stuff so that people can apply for that.
Are you
So
only focused on Floripa, or can you also help in other markets?
no, I can help with other people. I have partners in other places, and even have more developers from different regions now reaching out to want to help profile their developments with international clients as well. So
What
yeah,
about in the Northeast? Do you have some people up there?
yeah, in John Pessoa, yes, and links to developers. I can access various developers in different places as well. So I haven't
Cool.
sold anything
Yeah.
in the Northeast yet, but there's contacts there, and actually I think that's a market that's also in extension as well,
Well,
particularly
I
John
think it's an
Pessoa.
incredible. Some of those
Yeah,
places would be incredible investments, and secondarily, I think you get in as an investor for about half, right? Is it?
yeah, you can. There's definitely it's definitely cheaper, and actually the other thing to point out as well for um, the residency, the golden visa in the north and northeast of Brazil, it's a lower. It's only 700,000 reais, so
Yeah.
that's about $130,000. Um, and property prices are cheaper as well.
Yep.
And it's somewhere where it's hot all year round. The sea is warm, um, but there are pros and cons. Northeast is in general less developed than the south of Brazil, more
Absolutely.
inequality, um, not as safe, not as secure. So I'd say be careful about going to some of the bigger cities there as well, having lived there. But it's certainly a very beautiful part of the world, and there's some stunning beaches, and I think great deals to be had in
Yeah, no,
property.
that's where I was going with that when I asked the question. I think I just worded that wrong, but yeah, to you spend 30 or 40% less money and you
Yeah,
get your resident visa. If the only thing you're looking for is a resident visa, and maybe you don't have 180, 190 grand that you want to spend in the South, get something in the North, and
absolutely.
boom.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where in Brazil you get your residency. I mean, as long as if you buy a property in the northeast, you can live in any part of Brazil afterwards as well. So it doesn't tie you to that location as well, which is a good thing to be aware of.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, incredible place. I love Brazil, and I think at some point we'll connect. We'll connect in Brazil, James,
I'd look
when
forward
I'm
to
in
that.
Floripa or something like that. Is there anything that we missed here that you think is important for people to hear?
Yeah, that's a good question. What about some other kind of? I don't think we touched much on kind of ROIs from rent. We talked about some of the tax implications as well, a bit about appreciation as well.
Hmm.
But maybe it's helpful. Something I like to say to clients who are interested in having an investment property. What I'm seeing a lot of actually is people who want to get a property to qualify them for the residency, maybe as a plan B or spend part of the year here, but they also want that property to be an investment to generate some income as well.
Absolutely.
And to be clear, maybe just as a helpful guide, I always say to people, if you're buying somewhere to let that out, you can expect, depending on location, spec of the property, to charge for annual rent on a monthly basis. You can charge between 0.5 to 1% of the property value. That's quite realistic to kind of set up as an income stream. And of course, if you're Airbnb doing short-term rentals, then you can get a lot more. Recently had a client buy an investment property for $1 million. She got her keys this Thursday, and she's now put it on Airbnb. And most of January has been fully booked up, and in that month, she's charging below market value for daily, but I think she's making something like um, 25, almost but let's say 25,000 in that month. So that's already 2.5% of her property value she's going to get back in that month as well. So
Wow.
um, that's the height of tourist season, but I think it shows some of the potential that if you get a property in the right location, some of the money you can make off that, and that's ideal for someone who wants to spend part of their year there, but also have that property available for short-term rental during the height of summer, and at least cover all of their bills, all of their expenditure. What is it
Mhm.
you guys call the condo tax in the States? Is it HOA? Um,
HOA. That's right. That's a
yes.
monthly
So
fee that you pay for the building to manage your property.
exactly. So you can cover that. You can cover your city tax. You can cover your bills and make a profit as well. Even just letting it out in that summer period. So you can do
And
very well.
what's been? Do you have an idea of what's been the overall average appreciation? Let's say the last, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever,
Yeah.
on
It there are
properties in Puerto
statistics.
Rico.
Yeah, there are statistics we can look up. Here's if you were to look up FITSAP, maybe I can send you a link or something like that. It's all in Portuguese, but you can track the appreciation in specific cities in Brazil and specific neighborhoods as well.
Can you tell us
So
what that website is, just so people can hear that?
yeah, FITSAP. So
FITSAP.
it's I'm just going to type it in to make sure I'm quoting you correctly. Uh, FITSAP. It's basically it's like a national index of prices for all sorts of things. Let me just see if I can find it here. But it will give you prices. I mean, it will give you prices like it will give you um, car prices, how they've been doing, sales, etc. And it does the same for real estate. Uh,
Yeah,
FITSAP.
that's incredible. That'd be incredible to know. What the appreciation is going to be
Yeah,
ideally.
Fippy Zappy. Okay, I'm just gonna see if I can log on. Um, okay,
How
so
beautiful is the Portuguese language?
is the what do you mean by that?
I
The
love it. I just love it. I think
The
like
language,
Portuguese for
yes,
me is like music to my ears, man. It's like it's almost like
absolutely.
a bunch of kids just having fun all day long, right? Like
No,
it just
absolutely. I think there's something about languages as well. I mean, this is a different conversation for another time, but I think there's something
yeah,
about
yeah.
languages. It kind of it slightly alters your personality when you're speaking a different language. I think you
Ab-
sort of
Absolutely.
enter into that. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and I think there's good humor in with Brazilians, and with the Portuguese language. My British sarcasm is lost on them, unfortunately. Though I think I am now turning a
Well,
few.
yeah, and mine too. I've had that problem for sure in Latin America because Americans, we're all essentially from the same Americans and Brits. We're all from the same lineage somewhere down the line. So it's like you have very similar senses of humor, I think, in many ways. But well, the Brits have maintained their sense of humor. I think in the U.S. you just get so busy that we lose it. But but yeah, my sarcasm definitely does not work in Latin America at all. I have to turn into a different person.
No, but it
But
is a
yeah,
good
so
language. It is a playful language. Yeah.
no, I love the language, and to hear them speak it is just oh my god, that's just music to my ears. Especially if the girl is really beautiful, then it makes it even better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a married man, so I won't say too much about how
Yeah, you're
romantic,
gonna get in trouble.
or I get in trouble. But no, it's I couldn't find. I think I'd find it very having been married to a Brazilian for 20 years. I think I'd find it very unnatural trying to sound seductive in English now.
Yeah,
Or so
yeah,
yeah.
that's funny.
Going back to the appreciation question, the site is they would pronounce it Zipia, Vipsapi in Portuguese, which is spelled
So it's a
F I.
VIP
No, it's actually F. It's FIP E
SAP
ZAP. So
FIPEZAP.
yeah, exactly. And just it has a subsection on the site which is FIPZAP Imóveis. So Imóveis is property, and it will give you indexes both for rent and purchases for different cities, even different types of houses, but just and for specific cities, and even give you a breakdown of areas. So you'll be able to generate a PDF that will be very detailed on that. But just to give you an idea, just to summarize, certain areas in Florianopolis, such as Ingleses, where I live, has been going up around 22% a year. That's true of some
Per
other,
year?
yeah, exactly. Appreciation. There are
Wow.
other places in Florianopolis that perhaps, more centrally have gone up 10, 11%. You can generate it all there. In where's really growing in the state at the moment is a city called Itapema and also Porto Belo. So in some cases, that's been consistently doing, like different areas, been doing over 20% appreciation as well. Depending on where you are in certain cities and the spec of property, the developer it's delivered by, in Balneário Camboriú, beachfront properties, and this is high-end luxury from the top developer there, FG Empreendimentos. They have hit 30% appreciation a year.
Wow. And
Um,
and what's an
yeah,
ideal, let's say, two bedroom, two bath condo on the beach there?
like in Florianopolis, you could get that somewhere. I think new, good spec, good neighborhood. I think that would vary from somewhere between 800 realistically. In some instances, you can do cheaper, but I think 800 realistically to a million. You
Reais.
would yeah, reais.
So
Yeah,
so 100, 140 to 180, 190,000 USD.
yeah, yeah. If it's someone like Campeche, I mean, there's certain places. Campeche sees a lot of demand from gringos at the moment, and that the price has really gone up there. So maybe you probably are looking more like a million reais for something that's not beachfront by any means, but closer to the beach, good standard. You're probably looking around $1 million. In some cases, yes, you can find it cheaper. In glazes, you tend to get more bang for your buck. It's more accessible. So I'm using that comparison between the two. Campeche's further down south, is a beach neighborhood and fairly well developed. And the most populous neighborhood in the south of the island, close to the airport. And I'm using Ingleses as an example, as it's overall the most populous neighborhood in Florianopolis. It's almost like a small town in itself. Has probably the most developed neighborhood outside of the center. Has everything, like I say, like a small town, but a more accessible price, but going up because there's so many improvements going on in the neighborhood. So
wow, cool. I didn't realize you could still get in that cheap in Floripa. That's cheap for places, someone that's
yeah.
For someone that's in the States and is used to buying, $250,000 in the States doesn't get you anything anymore, especially in a good city. I mean, in the wilderness it will, but in good cities it's not getting you much.
Yeah. So no, they're good places. There are places. Of course, you can find stuff a lot more expensive than that in that spec, depending on where you are on the island as well. But there are good deals to be had. But at the same time, I think you do sometimes see people come with unrealistic expectations and maybe hoping that for, I don't know, $200 they'll have a beachfront modern condo and this amazing view. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist anymore here. There are good deals to be had, but it is cheap here, but still you would pay a price for having something that has a clear ocean view as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
cool. Yeah, but that's still a good price for
absolutely
for what Floripa offers. Yeah. So how do people reach out to you if they're interested in your services?
Yeah, we have a site, rocksinvestment.com. You can reach me by email on james@rocksinvestments. Also, I mean, anyone who's been to Brazil realizes that everything works on WhatsApp as well. So WhatsApp is another way. So number would be +55 48 991 407051.
Yeah, that WhatsApp, by the way, has not really caught on the way you think it would have in the U.S. I send people WhatsApps in the U.S. It takes them 3, 4, 5 days, and sometimes they don't even have WhatsApp.
No, exactly.
That's only for people who've been internationally traveling for a while and have figured out WhatsApp, but most people aren't.
No, it's amazing actually how much business is done on WhatsApp in Brazil.
Oh, it's crazy.
Like in England, so many like PDFs and things would come via emails from companies, and a lot of that just tends to come via WhatsApp in Brazil.
Especially the younger generations.
Yeah.
You ask people their email and they look at you like, what? Like, email? Just send me a WhatsApp. All right. And that happens to me on the podcast all the time. I'll be like, hey, what's your email so I can send you over, prep guide and all that stuff. And they're like, just send it on WhatsApp. Okay. It's fine. So, well, hey man, thank you for coming on. Really sincerely appreciate it. I think we got a lot of really great value out to people today. And I certainly hope that in the future, this helps you out and helps us all out. So thanks again. And I think that's it, man.
No, likewise, it's been an honor to come on. So thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully there'll be many more.
Thank you for joining us on the Matt Chambers Show. I'm your host, Matt Chambers. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show to help others discover it. Until next time, keep traveling, keep doing business, and keep living beyond borders. See you soon.